Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare. Let's get started. Hari Om. Sarika, you are unmuted.
सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावतीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। गीता ध्यानम्। ॐ पाठाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी। नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्रा येन त्वया भारततैल्यपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवैत्रीकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दुग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्ससुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्। वसुदेवसुदं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्। भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोतीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरननडे कैवर्तक केशवा पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्धोत्कटं नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाबोधितम्। लोके सज्जनषट्परैरहरहः पीयमानं मुदा भूयात् भारत पंकजं कलिमला प्रध्वंसिन श्रेयसे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयति गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणीन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदे साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदे गायन्ति यं सामगा ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुः सुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः
Hari Om. So what did we see last time? Karpanya dosho upahata swabhava. So when Arjuna is shaken up, he is literally shaken up by Sri Krishna, if we remember. When we studied verses 2 and 3 in this chapter, in chapter 2, there Sri Krishna actually uses strong words. He says there is dirt in your mind, kashmalam. And then he says, Klaibyam, don't behave in an important manner. So he uses, and we saw a number of other ways in which Krishna actually blasts Arjuna. Not just chides him, but actually gives him a dressing down. And Arjuna is obviously shaken up by that dressing down. And that helps him become aware of his great weakness, which is Karpanya dosha. And not only that, he is also becoming aware that this weakness of his, or this dosha of his, has affected his entire being, his whole being. Karpanya dosho pahata swabhava. So, Karpanya dosha, we also saw last time, was something that is deep but yet misplaced compassion. That led to self-pity for Arjuna. And he calls himself that he is pitying on himself. Karpanya dosha can also be interpreted to mean the weakness of a miser, kripana. So a miser is someone that holds on to his possession. Remember we talked about I and mine. A miser is a person who is not able to give up. Neither give up nor give away. So a person that holds on to his possessions, whatever they may be, material possessions, emotional possessions, intellectual possessions, all of these, when a person really holds on tight to them, he becomes a miser. And this is essentially a very narrow outlook in life. And this narrowness, it is against the law of the spirit. Spirit is known to be vast. Spirit is known to be all giving. And when an individual does something that is contrary to the spirit, at that time, there is a lot of misery that sets in. Result of which the possessor essentially loses connection with the original personality, the swabhava. And when one loses connection with this original personality, one falls into the trap of unhappiness and miseries. And this we saw was the Arjuna Vishada Yoga. So having recognized this, what does Arjuna do? He asks for guidance, decisive guidance. He says, Nishchatam. So he asks for decisive guidance, and he asks for a solution that holds good under all circumstances, not just for the time being. He says, give me a permanent solution. Give me something that will last forever. So if a young child consumes, tablespoons full of sugar, it doesn't matter. As much of sweet a young child can have, it is supposed to help the child in the growth. But if a 75-year-old person with diabetes is taking sugar, then what happens? Then it goes completely against the human being's, health aspects. So what Arjuna is seeking here is something that will be relevant and that will hold good the sugar that can be consumed at any point in time under any condition. the knowledge that will hold good and true at any point in time and under any or whatever condition, and a solution that is truly good. He is also asking for a solution that brings true fulfillment to him, which goes deep inside him and brings him true fulfillment. This, that Arjuna, what he is seeking, is nothing but Brahma Vidya. We talked about it earlier. Brahma Vidya, or the biggest knowledge of all, through which human beings achieve their Parama Purushartha. So Arjuna here is asking for that ultimate knowledge from Sri Krishna. And we will continue from here. We'll go to the 8th verse.
Nahi prapashyami mamapanudyad
Nahi prapashyami mamapanudyad
yachokamuchoshanamindriyanam
yachchokamuchoshanamindriyanam
avapya bhuma vasapatnamriddham
avapya bhuma vasapatnamriddham
Rajyam suranam apichadipatyam
Rajyam suranam apichatipatyam
Nahi prapashyami mamapanudyad yachokamucho shanamindriyanam avapya bhuma vasapatnamriddham Rajyam suranam apichadipatyam.
So yachokam mama. Yachokam is actually yat shokam. That is that shokam sorrow. Mama, mine. That sorrow of mine. Nahi prapashyami. I do not see myself finding a solution to that sorrow of mine. And he says, apanudyad. That means I do not see any end to this sorrow. So oftentimes we are advised, and Arjuna is also anticipating that Sri Krishna will tell him that, sorrow is something which is temporary, it's a part and parcel of life, deal with it, move on gamely, and so on and so forth. And we will see that Sri Krishna is saying a few words to these effects too. But then he's anticipating, and then he says, it is not that simple of a sorrow. This sorrow is something that burns me up. We have all seen that among the worst injuries is the injury of a burn. It not only affects you in the surface, but it can go deep inside. It's the worst among injuries. And Arjuna is using that analogy. He says it burns me up. It's not something which is, pretty simple. It torments me. And not only that, it burns up my entire personality. So not just physically. Remember we talked about he describing all his physical aspects of suffering. The skin is burning, his skin is becoming sweaty and so on, and he's trembling. He says it is affecting my entire personality. Uchoshanam indriyanam. Uchoshanam means, choshanam is burning. Uchoshanam is peak of burning. And what is it burning? Indriyanam, which is my personality. And then he says that even if after all this, I am free of enemies in this earth, and I also enjoy supremacy over the gods, even then this sorrow will not leave. Not just now in the middle of the battlefield, even in future, if I have no enemies, and if I am reigning over the gods, this sorrow will continue to be with me. Asapatnam means unrivaled. Unrivaled meaning nobody else can stand up to me and fight, which means I am free of enemies. Where? In Bhuma, in the earth. So I have no rivals on the planet earth. And Adipatyam, Adipatyam is lordship. Of what? Of Suranam. Suranam means the gods. So I have lordship over the gods. So I have kingship in the planet earth, and I have lordship over the gods. And even if this happens, it's not going to go away. It's like saying, like Arjuna is going to a doctor, like we are going to a doctor and we have injured ourselves, a really bad sprain or a fracture or whatever. and we are trying to describe the pain to the doctor. We have to go to the doctor, that's very clear. So Arjuna here has come to the doctor. And we are trying to describe the pain, but it's impossible to describe. One, because the pain is tremendous. It's not allowing us to describe. And two, when there is deep pain, you can't put your finger on where exactly it is. You know it's paining, but you don't know what the source of the pain is. So Arjuna is in that situation. I need a solution and I need it fast. But all I can tell you is that this sorrow is burning me up. Nothing more than that. So this indicates that the second part of what he says, that Arjuna also has the quality of Vairagya and Shraddha. Remember, we talked about the qualities, the good qualities of Arjuna that make him capable and make him qualified to go through the spiritual path. Here we see that, what is Arjuna saying? Arjuna is saying that I may become the king of the planet Earth, I may become the lord of all the gods, but still this sorrow is going to be there. So that shows that he has that Vairagya or dispassion. And two, he's saying that you need to give me a solution, Sri Krishna. So he has that faith and that belief in Sri Krishna. I need your help now. Please don't ask me to find a solution. You need to give me that solution. We will now recite verses 9 and 10 together.
Sanjaya Uvacha.
Sanjaya Uvacha.
Eva Mukta Hrishikesham.
Eva Muktva Hrishikesham.
Gudakesha Parantapa.
Gudakesha Parantapa.
Nayotsya iti Govindam.
Nayotsya iti Govindam.
Uktva tushnim babhuvavaha.
Uktva tushnim babhuvaha.
Tamuvacha Hrishikeshaha.
Tamuvacha Hrishikeshaha.
Prahasanniva Bharata.
Prahasanniva Bharata.
Senayorubhayor madhye.
Senayorubhayor madhye.
Vishidantamidam vachaha.
Vishidantamidam vachaha.
Sanjaya Uvacha. Eva Muktva Hrishikesham. Gudakesha Parantapa. Nayotsya iti Govindam. Uktva tushnim babhuvavaha. Tamuvacha Hrishikesham. Prahasanniva Bharata. Senayorubayor madhye. Vishidantamidam vachaha.
So Sanjaya gives two names to Arjuna here. So this is where Sanjaya, every now and then we see that Sanjaya is reporting what is happening in the battlefield to Dhritarashtra. So Sanjaya, we saw, has been given that divine vision where he can not only see, he can also hear. He can not only see and hear, but he can also perceive and understand the unsaid or the unseen also. So that is the amount of power that he has been bestowed with. So every now and then Sanjaya will come with his commentary. And this is one of the, these two verses, it is Sanjaya's commentary. So Sanjaya, while referring to Arjuna, gives him two names. The first one is Gudakesha. We have seen this earlier also, he calls him Gudakesha. Gudaka means sleep. And Esa means the Lord. So Gudakesha is the conqueror of sleep. And in this context, it refers to all the qualities pertaining to inertia or tamas. We spoke about in our introduction class, we spoke about tamasic behavior, right? So all the qualities that pertain to tamas are referred to here. Laziness, procrastination, dull attitude, slothy behavior, and so on and so forth. The other name he uses is Parantapa. So essentially in the Gudakesha, he is saying he has conquered all of that tamas. And Parantapa means extreme vigor. Tapa means scorching, putting something into fire, scorching. And Paran is enemies. So the scorcher of enemies is Parantapa. For that you need extreme vigor. In this context, it is extreme vigor. And we notice that Sanjaya uses this together. Gudakesha Parantapa. Gudakesha Parantapa implies and here it is used together, a person who is the embodiment of a perfect warrior. So he's referring to Arjuna as an embodiment of a perfect warrior. And this perfect warrior, we are seeing what is happening to him. So such a person, after having elaborately described his problems to Sri Krishna, and then he tells Rishikesha, I shall not fight. Na yotsya, not yotsya, fight. I will not fight. So we saw the two previous verses where initially Arjuna was a little confused, and then he prostrated and surrendered to Lord Sri Krishna. So taken in that context, and after that he said that you need to give me a solution. You need to tell me the solution, indicating that once he gets the solution, he will be ready to fight. But right now he is incapacitated. Because of the incapacitation, he is not able to fight. So taken in that context, what he's saying is that you get me the solution. Once you give me the solution, I will see that I can fight. But right now, I'm not able to fight. I will not fight. And then what happens to him? Babhuvaha tushnin. So basically, tushnin means silent. Silent means stunned silence. A state where a person gets completely physically and mentally silent. There is pin drop silence, and the person has just gone into a different state of existence. Not due to meditation, but more sometimes due to shock, or sometimes due to, in Arjuna's case, sorrow. Because of that sorrow, he falls into complete silence in terms of his appearance, both physically and mentally. Now, Sanjaya also uses two names for Sri Krishna. The first name he uses is Rishikesha. Again, we have seen this name earlier. Rishika means the Indriyas, which is the five senses and the mind. And it is very important to take the five senses and the mind together. We will see why a little later. So he is the Lord of the Indriyas, or the Lord of the five senses and the mind. Here it indicates Aishwarya. We saw the qualities of Bhagavan. And one of the qualities, or the first quality, was Aishwarya. Aishwarya means power, control. And that is what Rishikesha indicates here. The control over five senses and the mind. And in that sense, Bhagavan Sri Krishna is Sarva Shakti. Sarva, everything, Shakti, has the power to control everything. The second use for Sri Krishna, to refer to Sri Krishna here, is Govindam. Govindam refers to all knowing. Dam means Vedas. We talked about it when we referred to Veda Vyasa. The Vak, the Vani, the Vedas, that is Dam. And Vidanti means one who possesses the Dam. So Govindam here is a person, somebody who possesses all the knowledge, the all-knowing. And one who possesses the entire Vedas is Govinda. So in that sense, Bhagavan Sri Krishna is referred to as Govindam, or Sarva Jnani, meaning all-knowing, all-controlling and all-knowing. So this all-controlling and all-knowing person, or God, is now going to advise the embodiment of a warrior. What has happened to the embodiment of a warrior? Confusion, because of which he has become extremely despondent. And after being jolted out of his despondency, he is then asked Sri Krishna, who is this Sarva Shakti, Sarva Jnani, for help. And he has submitted himself completely to Sri Krishna. And that is the situation we are in now. We'll go to verse number 10. Tamuvacha Rishikesha. Tamuvacha Rishikesha Prahasanniva Bharata. Prahasanniva means as though smiling. Actually, as though mockingly smiling. That is Prahasanniva. Saying it in such a manner that the other person feels offended. We have seen that happen in our lives, right? You can mock a person in two ways. Either you can be angrily mocking or smilingly mocking. Here, Lord Krishna is smilingly mocking Arjuna so that he feels offended and ashamed. That is prahasanna. And the purpose of Sri Krishna or the purpose of the teacher here is not to mock Arjuna, not to make him feel small. That's not the objective, not to make the student feel low and small. The purpose is to trigger action. And how do you trigger action? What is the purpose? In two ways. The first is to grab the attention. We talked about it in the last class also. Sri Krishna grabs Arjuna's attention so that the listening is happening completely. It is one of the qualities of the leader that we referred to. If you are not getting the attention of your audience, what you are saying is going to go away unproductive and unutilized. So one of the qualities of the leader is to grab the attention so that the person, the student, is indeed listening to you and grasping what you're saying. And when that listening and grasping is there, then we can be sure that the student is receiving the knowledge. So one of the goals of Sri Krishna when he uses this mocking attitude is to grab the attention. Earlier he had used another attitude, which was blasting him. Now it has come to mocking him. The second goal is that the student should not just receive the knowledge, the student should then act upon the knowledge. Just receiving the knowledge is not good enough. Just, understanding. One is the teacher is teaching us in a class. We are going to school or college or whatever, and the teacher is teaching. One is when it goes above the head. We don't understand anything. The other situation could be where we already know or we think we know. So we are not paying attention. We are distracted. Very few students are those who are actually listening to the teacher. And they are grasping, they are understanding, they are indeed learning. They are getting what the teacher is talking about. But after that, if there is an exam, if you forget what the teacher taught, then there is no use. So you have to utilize what was taught later on also. So the two goals here are to grab the attention of the student and then help the student act on it. Now there is also one more interpretation which comes from Kathopanishad. So there we see that Senayor Ubayor Madhye, which is in between, stationed in between the two armies. Remember, that is where Arjuna had commanded Sri Krishna to take the chariot. Okay, before he went through this confusion. And that is where they are standing. On one side are the good forces represented by the Pandavas. On the other side are the bad forces represented by the Kauravas. And Arjuna, the ego or the jiva with the ego, he surrenders completely to the Lord who is the pure consciousness. So the ego surrenders to the pure consciousness. And then there is the body, which is the chariot. There are the 5 horses, which are the 5 senses. All of them have been yoked together by the mind, which is represented by the reins, which is held by the pure consciousness. So you have Arjuna, who is the ego. You have Sri Krishna, who represents the pure consciousness. You have the chariot, which is the body. The 5 horses, which are the senses. And the mind, which is pulling the 5 horses and in the hands of the pure consciousness. And that pure consciousness in whose hands the control lies, the Aishwarya is, that pure consciousness is reassuringly giving a smile to the student. So this is a very different interpretation. This is not mocking. This is reassuring based on the Kathopanishad. So the teaching starts now. Okay, till now the stage has been set. The curtains have been drawn, the characters have been introduced. We have seen, who is where, which position, what did Duryodhana do initially, how did Bhishma react. Just like Sri Krishna, took decisive action, Bhishma had done that, blowing his conch to shut up Duryodhana. Similarly, Sri Krishna shut up Arjuna here now. Not by blowing the conch, but by an explosive statement. So we have seen that the stage has been set. Now is when the Srimad Bhagavad Gita teaching starts. So before we go there, let's do a quick close our eyes, maybe within our own minds recite Om, the single syllabus name for Bhagwan, invoke Bhagwan within us, and also become students, like Arjuna was a student, submit to the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita and become students, all of us together. Okay, so let us do that for about 5 seconds and then we'll continue. Shri Bhagavan Vacha.
Shri Bhagavanu Vacha.
Shri Bhagavan Vacha.
Ashocyanan Vashochatvam.
Ashocyanan Vashocastvam.
Pragyavadamsha Bhashase.
Pragyavadamscha Bhashase.
Gatasuna Gatasuncha.
Gatasuna Gatasuncha.
Nanushocanti Panditaha.
Nanushocanti Panditaha.
Sri Bhagavanu Vacha. Ashocyanan Vashocastvam. Prajnavadamsha Bhashase. Gatasuna Gatasuncha. Nanushocanti Panditaha.
Shri Bhagavan Vacha, the blessed Lord said. I will request all of you, when you go back and revise, look at the notes, please look at Bhagavan. We had described why we refer to Bhagavan as Bhagavan and what are the qualities of a Bhagavan. Please do go through them once again. And that Bhagavan said, Vacha, Uvacha, Tvam, you, Pandita, you who is so knowledgeable. Pandita means knowledgeable. Panda means a person who possesses all the knowledge. You, O knowledgeable, what are you doing? Anvashochah. You are grieving non-stop. And who are you grieving for? Ashocyan. For those who ought not to be grieved for. You, so knowledgeable person, is grieving non-stop for those who ought not to be. We spoke about this ought not last time also, right? Who ought not to be grieved for. And at the same time, not only are you grieving, but at the same time, bhashase, pragyavadamscha bhashase. You are speaking words of wisdom. You are offering your gyan, you are offering your counsel, your upadesha. So on one side, you are grieving non-stop for what should not be grieved for. On the other side, you are sharing your words of wisdom. What a contradiction. So continuing with that mocking, in this case, the mocking aspect, Bhagavan is telling Arjuna, that why are you doing this showing this contradictory behavior? Actually, Arjuna spoke a lot. And Arjuna spoke a lot of very many important aspects that pertain to an individual, to the family, to the society, to the nation. All of these things he spoke about. And he brought them into context. And then Krishna says, remember, Gata soon. Gata soon means asu. Gata asu. Asu means prana. Prana is the breath of life. The life that is within us is prana. Gata soon means someone whose pranas have gone. Gata, which means someone who is dead. Agata soon, someone contrary. Agata soon. When A comes in, that means someone who is alive. Someone whose pranas are still there. So those who are really wise, they neither grieve for those who are dead, nor do they grieve for those who are living. This is what Sri Krishna says to Arjuna here. Now, I had told you earlier when we started chapter 2, that chapter 2, at that time I had divided into 2 portions, and I told you that we'll talk about why is it 2 portions later. So I would now like to tell you, I want to look at it as 3 portions. So the first portion or the first section of chapter 2 is up to verse number 8, which is what? which is up to the time that Arjuna surrenders to Sri Krishna. Now I'm just describing the chapter to you right now. I'm not explaining the verse, that is done. So up to verse number 8 is, or up to the time where Arjuna surrenders to Sri Krishna, is the first portion of chapter 2. The second portion of chapter 2, which we are just going to begin now, that is from verse 11 to verse 37. Verse 11 to verse 37 is the second portion. This portion consists of the logic or the reasoning by which one comprehends the true nature of the ultimate reality or the absolute reality. So the reason or the logic through which we comprehend the true nature of the self, which we saw earlier, is the divinity. Unveiling the divinity within is what we talked about, right? So the reasoning through which, the logic through which we comprehend the true nature of that absolute reality, of that pure consciousness, that is called Sankhya. And that is from verse 11 to verse 37. When we get this logic, through the logic and reasoning, when we comprehend this true nature, then what happens? One is able to eliminate all the sorrows that arise out of grief, attachment, and so on and so forth. So all that comes from attachment and then the sorrow. By gaining this comprehension, we will be able to eliminate all of that. Now, this portion further has two more subsections. So those are, the first one deals with Atma Vidya. Atma Vidya is Atma is the true self, the nature of the true self and the body. So the first one, from verse 11 to 37, is the second section. In that, verse 11 to 30 deals with Atma Vidya. And it removes Atma Moha, the delusion that we have about our own nature. Right? The Swabhava that has been deluded, that delusion is removed by giving Atma Jnana. Sri Krishna gives Atma Jnana, or the knowledge of the self, through which the Atma Moha is removed. And that section is called Atma Vidya. The second section from verse 31 to 37, that is called Swadharma Vidya. Remember, we talked about ignorance and we talked about duty. So the first is addresses the ignorance about the self. The second addresses ignorance about the duty, what my duty is, nature of the individual's duty. This is from verse 31 to 37. And it removes any delusion one may have about one's duty by giving Swadharma Jnana, which is knowledge about one's duty. And the third section, that consists of the technique. While the second section consists of the logic, reasoning, and jnana, the third section consists of the technique. And technique for what? Technique to attain this wisdom. And remember, we talked about technique means what? Nothing but yoga. And that is from verse 38 to the end of the chapter, which is 72, verse 72. And through this technique, through this yoga, one attains the perfection in action and equipoise under extremities. So there are various, we talked about, the extremities earlier. Under those extremities, and we will shortly talk about it again, under extremities, under various things that the outer world keeps throwing at us, how do we maintain that equipoise? And maintaining that equipoise, how do we act perfectly? Perfection in yoga. That is what this third section will give. So section 1 is up to surrender. Section 2 is the logic and the reasoning through which one is able to comprehend the absolute reality or the true nature of the self, and that is called Sankhya. And through Sankhya, you eliminate sorrows coming out of attachment, coming out of grief. And that is done in two ways, by giving Atma Vidya, which removes Atma Moha, and the second is by giving Swadharma Vidya, which removes Swadharma Moha. And finally, the technique through which one gets the So we remember we talked about earlier, God just does not give knowledge. God also gives the ways, the tools through which to implement that knowledge. And that is the yoga. So the section that primarily deals with Atma Vidya is called Sankhya Yoga. And the section that primarily deals with action perfection is called Buddhi Yoga. We will come to all of that in chapter 2. Though the chapter 2 itself is known as Sankhya Yoga. One part of that, and Sri Krishna will speak about it in verse 37, is Buddhi Yoga, which is the action perfection part of it. Okay, so with that we will go to verse 12.
Natvevaham jatu nasam.
Natvevaham jatu nasam.
Natvam neme janadipaha.
Natvam neme janadipaha.
Nachaiva na bhavishyamaha.
Nachaiva na bhavishyamaha.
Sarve vayamata param.
Sarve vayamata param.
Natvevaham jatu nasam. Natvam neme janadipaha. Nachaiva na bhavishyamaha. Sarve vayamata param.
So now Bhagavan Sri Krishna, he has started the part of Atma Vidya in bestowing Arjuna, and through Arjuna all of us with Atma Vidya. And we saw that Atma Vidya essentially means the knowledge about the self and the body. So Sri Krishna first starts with the body. That is because the basic fundamental misconception about the self is that I am my body. The next one that he will come to a little later is I am my mind. But the first fundamental aspect is that people normally equate ourselves with the body. And here Sri Krishna deals with this misconception relating to the body. And he says, not indeed at any time. I was not there. Please note the use of that double negative, not. This is the beauty of the Sanskrit language. And actually, I would say, the two negatives become positive. Math starts here. Sanskrit language is one of the oldest languages in the world. And in that sense, math actually starts here. So, not at any point in time, at any time, was I not there. Jatu is at any time. And nor were you not there. And nor were these rulers of men not there. So Sri Krishna is implying to say that all these people, Arjuna, Sri Krishna, the ruler, the kings that, Arjuna is saying that I have to fight, all of them, there was not any time when they were not there, which means they were there. Jatu means at any time. Tvam is you. Janadipa, the rulers of men, the kings, the warriors who are assembled before, in front of them in the battlefield, about whom Arjuna is concerned. And he says, after our time, Paramata. Paramata means after the body ceases to exist, after this time of ours. Nachaiva na bhavishyamaha. It is not that we will not be there. That is in the future. So neither were we not there at any point in time, nor that we will not be there in the future. We will be there even after our time is over. So he's implying to say, or he's making Arjuna understand that the body has nothing to do with one's existence. The concept of I connected to the body is a wrong concept. Now, this is something that we all, can have our own views on and fight our own aspects about. But some of the things that I found very interesting when I read through these were, number one, if you take somebody like Mozart, for example, right? Mozart, at the age of 4, he composed his first sonata. At the age of 4. At the age of 4, most of the kids are just learning to speak words. And at the age of 7, he conducted his first opera. How does that happen? That's some kind of a miracle. Okay, so the only proper, justification to that could be that he came in with that knowledge of music to this planet. When he was born, he had that knowledge of music because he had not gone through any formal training. He just started playing from within. So the only assumption is that he came in with that knowledge. And where did he get that knowledge? In some world, in some life, in some existence? That is where he got it. So there's some sense to it. The other thing is I also Googled this, and there is a lot of interesting research about life after death. It's fantastic, actually. It just sucks you in. So if you guys are interested, there is research by Stanford University. There is research by all kinds of premier institutions about life after death. There are stories, verified stories, okay? Not hearsays, verified story where there is a human being who says, I remember my previous life, and explicitly relates, who she was and how many children she had, and, other details about the house, about how it is structured, what happened there. And then when they go and verify it, it all is true. So there are lots of such similar cases, so it is quite fascinating, if not mind-boggling. So here, that is what Sri Krishna is saying. Sri Krishna is saying that all of us, me, you, everybody else, these warriors, all of us, there was not a time in the past, and there was not a time, there is at any given point in time, it's not as if they were not there, and it is not as if they will not be there in the future. And in the next verse, he talks about the modifications of the body, the modifications that the body goes through, including the final modification, which is death. So we'll read the next verse.
Dehinosmin yata dehe.
Dehinosmin yata dehe.
Kaumaram yauvanam jara.
Kaumaram yauvanam jara.
Tata dehantara praptir.
Tatha dehantara praptir.
Dhirastatra na muhyati.
Dhirastatra na muhyati.
Dehinosmin yata dehi. Kaumaram yauvanam jara. Tata dehantara praptir. Dhirastatra na muhyati.
Deha means body. Dehin means something that is other than the body. So Dehinaha is that which apparently seems to have a body, which is what? The soul, the consciousness. So the consciousness apparently seems to have a body because it resides in that body. And that Dehina or Dehin, what is not the body, it witnesses the changes in the body that the body goes through the time of its existence. And through the time of its existence, the body goes through childhood, or actually even before childhood, it is born, it goes through infanthood, childhood, youth, adulthood, old age. And this Dehin, which is apparently the body, but it is not, that true self is witnessing these changes. And finally, what happens? Dehi, so before that, sorry, Dehi Kumaram Yavanam Jara. Kumaram means childhood, Yavanam is youth, Jara is old age. So it witnesses all these stages. Now these stages are all mutually exclusive. The infanthood passes, childhood comes. Childhood passes, youth comes in. Youth passes, adulthood comes in. Adulthood passes, old age comes in. And finally, all that passes and the soul goes to another body. So every stage passes. They are all mutually exclusive. At the age of 70, we may feel very childish. We may feel that we are still very young at heart. But the reality is that that youngness has gone away. Right? So that is what Sri Krishna is trying to say here. Dehantara praptir. After the attainment of death. Praptir is attainment. Dehant is death. After the attainment of death, also a change happens. Exactly like infanthood passes into childhood, passes into adulthood, passes into old age, passes into another stage where the soul moves into, or the consciousness moves into, takes over another body. And then he says, Dhiras tatra na mukhyati. A wise person, a firm person, does not get deluded. He does not get grieved. He understands this modification that takes place. And he is dhiraha. Dhiraha means he is wise. Dhi means wise, wisdom. Or dhi also means firm. Through that wisdom comes the firmness. And one who possesses this wisdom is firm through these changes. So when one does not identify with one's body, then one does not grieve about the consciousness passing into another body. Just as one does not grieve growing old. In fact, this actually happens, when you are in a situation which is really, for example, I gave you the example of an army last time, right? When you're in the army, when you're facing a reality where you can get shot, or when somebody is lying in a hospital bed in the final stages of a disease like cancer, right? You're facing, you're facing death, what do you know? You know, Dehantara Prapti. I am going to attain that status or that state or that condition, what is called death. There is either a big possibility in the battleground, or there is a real possibility in the hospital bed, right? So most often than not, people have that acceptance. Very seldom do you see human beings, passing away without that acceptance. Most of the human beings have that acceptance. Why is it that you forget about it while you are living? Is one of the unsaid words of Sri Krishna. So this knowledge is the panacea for all sorrow. If we have this knowledge, then the attachment keeps going down. And when that attachment keeps going down, the sorrow that comes in from the object world ceases to exist. We'll read verses 14 and 15 together.
Matra sparshastu kaunteya.
Matra sparshastu kaunteya.
Shitoshna sukha dukkadaha.
Shitoshna sukha dukkada.
Agama payino nitya.
Agama payino nitya.
Stamsi takshasva bharata.
Ram titikshasva bharata.
Yam hina vyatatayantyē.
Yam hina vyatatantyete.
Purusham purusharsabha.
Purusham purusharshabha.
Samadukka sukham dhiram.
Samadukha sukham dhiram.
Somritatva kalpate.
Somrittatvaya kalpate.
Matra sparshastu kaunteya. Shitoshna sukha dukkadaha. Agama payino nitya. Stamsi takshasva bharata. Yam hina vyatatyante. Purusham purusharsabha. Samadukka sukham dhiram. Somrittatvaya kalpata.
So, matra sparshastu Kaunteya. Kaunteya is who? Kaunteya is son of Kunti. That is Arjuna. Matra is that by which we comprehend. What do we comprehend with? Obviously, the first thing is the senses. Senses perceive. But once that perception happens, remember the input, process, output. The process happens in the mind. The objective mind and the subjective mind. So the senses and the mind together are the matra by which we comprehend. Senses cannot comprehend on their own. They require the mind to be able to comprehend. And that is why actually we say Hrishikesha. Hrishikesha, who is the Lord of the senses and the mind. Because the senses by themselves can only perceive. They cannot comprehend. And this is the Lord of comprehension, not just the Lord of perception, is Hrishikesha. Sparsha means contact. So that by which we comprehend comes into contact with what? It comes into contact with Shitoshna Sukha Dukkha. What gives us Sukha? What gives us Dukkha? What gives us Sheet? What gives us Ushna? Heat, cold, pleasure, pain. So when these matras come in contact with what gives us these experiences of heat and cold, pleasure and pain, at that time is what Sri Bhagavan is referring to now. So whether it is heat or cold, that's fine. But does heat create joy or does heat create sadness? Does it create pleasure or does it create sorrow? That depends on the mind. And that also depends on the environment. For example, in hot summer, further heat will not create joy. In extremely cold winter, further cold is not going to create joy. If you walk into my home at 4 p.m. or if I dial into your, start ringing you for the Bhagavad Gita class at 4 p.m., then yes, you are willing, ready, accepting. But if I do that at 4 a.m., I'll probably hear a few expletives, right? It's not a time when you want to receive this interruption. Or if I hear the doorbell ring at that time, immediately there is this irritation. So what the activity, what we go through, whether it causes sorrow or joy, depends on how we comprehend it. The comprehension is what leads to the sorrow and joy. And what about them? What is God trying to say here? All of this is agamaha apayinaha. Agama apayinaha, which means they come and go. There is a beginning to it and there is an end to it. And they are anitya, which means they are ephemeral, temporary. These ephemeral aspects of the world, they belong to the mind. Mind is nothing but continuous flow of thoughts. Everything keeps coming and going. And when that is true, when that heat or cold, whether it gives you joy or not, depends on your comprehension. And anyway, once you comprehend, it is something that is going to come and go. Then, when you know that, tam titikshva, remember we talked about the sadhana chatushtayam. And one of the aspects of samadhi, satka sampatti was what? Titiksha. Titiksha means forbearance. So tam means you. Titikshvaha means bear them. You need to bear with these. All these ephemeral aspects which are anitya, you need to bear with them. And how will you bear with them, Arjuna? Using your vivek. Viveka is the capability to discriminate between the ephemeral and the permanent. And when you know that this is ephemeral, then you should have and you should develop the forbearance to bear with them. Detach yourself from these experiences, detach yourself from the joy and the sadness. They are all mental modifications. Previously, Bhagavan talked about the physical modifications. Kaumaram, Yavvana, Jara. The physical modifications. Here he is saying that these are mental modifications. Just bear with them. Rise above them. And he is telling who? Bharata. Oh Bharata. Bharata means a person who revels in knowledge. Bha is knowledge. Ratha is reveling. So you are a person who revels in this knowledge. You should be able to bear with it because you know already. Bharata also, remember we talked about it earlier, means the descendant of King Bharata. A person who belongs to the Bharata dynasty is also Bharata. But here God is talking to him as a person who has the bha and who revels in that knowledge. You revel in this knowledge, so you should know. Please bear with it. Yam hina yatayante te Purusham Purusharsabha. Purusham here refers to Puri Shanya Tva Purusham. Puri means what? Like Jahangir Puri, Puri means city. You will find lots of places, Puri Jagannath city, okay? The city where Jagannath resides is Puri Jagannath. So Puri means city. Shayana means where somebody exists. That place, Tva, Shayanam Tva, that is Purusham. Here Purusha essentially refers to the self. And it is the self in which the bodies reside. All the bodies reside in the self. So this Purusha, this self, this super consciousness, this pure consciousness in which all bodies reside, that is not affected by the pain or the pleasure. Sama dukkham, sukham. Sama means constant, stable. At what? At sukham, at dukkham. Sama dukkham sukham dhiram. By being constant during joys and sorrows, there is this dhiram or firmness. And this dhiram or firmness propels the mind. Propels the mind to what? To sokalpate, which means to the fitness, to being fit, and to being fit for mritatvaya. Mritatvaya means immortality. So this self in which all the bodies reside, that self has that firmness, and that firmness comes from the equipoise under extremities of sukha and dukkha, and that equipoise makes that self fit to become immortal. This is what God is teaching Arjuna here. So one who has discovered the true nature of the self, one who has got that mental equipoise, that calm endurance, titiksha, mental equipoise, calm endurance, that person is alone fit for immortality. So like I talked about the army, in fact, when you are there facing those bullets, if somebody says patriotism, like I said, that's not true. You are there is death and life in front of you. You are only focused on that. One of the best things that I like, one of the examples that I really like is, most of you would have heard about Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl, he wrote this really famous book, which is called Man's Search for Meaning. He was a psychologist who was in one of the concentration camps, and there he actually talks, it's a beautiful book to read at least once. He talks about, the kind of torture that one has to go through. We all know how many people died, but it takes one to the extreme in terms of suffering. And then he says, when we are no longer able to change a situation, because somebody else is torturing you and the body is going through it. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And this realization is what he actually says enabled him to survive. And not just survive, come out fit and strong. So Bhagavan Sri Krishna is telling us here that one who has this knowledge, when you have that, when one who is this Bharata, this possessor of that knowledge, and one who understands that the self in which all the bodies reside is able to go through these transformations without getting impacted by those transformations, then you qualify for that immortality. With this, we come to an end to our session today. Thank you. Hari Om. We will say the invocation prayer.
Om Asatu Va सद्गमया तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमया मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमया ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति
Hari Om Shri
हरि
Guru
ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरि ओम
Thank you, Hari Om. So we'll open up. We still have 15 minutes to go. Any thoughts, comments, questions?
So Srini, I have a question. We defined Bhagwan. We defined the quality of Bhagwan, and here the word Manushya is coming, right? And we are saying Manushya need to know that and all that. But I thought Manushya is something which is with the body, right? Why in this portion Bhagwan is saying that Manushya should be above all these shoka and all these things. I thought we are connected. Manushya is defined with the body, right? And it's not something which is beyond the body. And if the body is there, then there are senses, and then there are all these sorrows, and everything is with it. Or is the definition of Manushya something different than what I have understood here?
Okay, Deepak, quick question. Where are you referring to? Where did you see Manushya?
In the 14 number,
Matra sparsthashtu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkha agama payino nitya stam titikshasva bharata.
so when I'm reading the meaning of this, so
let me take this what you're saying, because I kind of understand what you're saying. So you are saying that the body is the human, the body is the man, the body is the Purusha. So
yeah,
when we
exactly. Yes.
Purusha, you are saying, are you referring to Purusha?
Yes.
Yeah. So right. So so here Purusha refers to the self. Purusha refers to the pure consciousness in whom the bodies reside.
Okay.
So there are multiple bodies, they reside in the pure consciousness. And that is what it refers to.
Okay.
It does not refer to a single body. It refers to the pure consciousness.
Okay. Got it. No.
Any thoughts, comments, anyone? Because this is a very interesting part of the Bhagavad Gita. Not many of us may agree with various concepts that are coming, but that we covered today, and we are going to cover till verse 37. Some of these concepts people find it hard to agree with. Beyond 37, when it comes to the yoga of when we go away from the logic and the reasoning about what is temporary, what is permanent, to the yoga of where we say we seek perfection in action, that is a lot more palatable than this. This is harder. Aditi, are you?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment about, I guess, the last few words that you said. If you can't change the situation, change your attitude towards it, right? That's an excellent thought, I would say. Yeah.
True. I was actually quoting Viktor. I completely agree with you. I was quoting Viktor Frankl. He actually, this is his quote unquote. He says, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves.
Yeah. That's an excellent thought.
And when we spoke earlier about karma becoming karma yoga, he said karma is just action. And for karma to become karma yoga, you need the attitude.
I
the
would
right.
say you need a lot of forbearance for that to change yourself.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for karma to become karma yoga, and we'll see this in future also, the attitude that is required to begin with, there are two attitudes. One is Ishvara Arpana Buddhi and Prasada Buddhi. Ishvara Arpana Buddhi is that whatever karma I am doing, oh Lord, it is devoted for you only. And Prasada Buddhi is that whatever I receive in return, whether it is what I expected or not, is your prasada, your, you, the benefactor, is giving me whatever it is. So I take it, receive it in that spirit. When you start with that, like I had given the Federer example last time, right? So Federer is devoting his game to a holistic cause. Call that holistic cause God. And then whatever comes back, he receives it gracefully. If he loses the match, he loses the match. He starts focusing on the next match. But at that match, he's being very graceful to the winner. So when you have this Ishvara Arpana Buddhi, the attitude of Ishvara Arpana Buddhi and Prasada Buddhi, karma becomes karma yoga.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hello, namaste. This is Kajal.
Hello, Kajal.
Hi. So I have this question. जैसे आप you understand Hindi?
Yes, please ask in Hindi. Yes, I do.
हाँ. तो जैसे आपने बोला कर्म योगा, राइट? तो अगर कोई चीज आपने स्टार्ट करी, आपको लगा कि आपका कर्म योग है, फिर एक टाइम के बाद यू फील लाइक, मे बी ये कम्प्लीटली ऑफ द टॉपिक होगा, बट स्टिल आई एम आस्किंग, यू फील लाइक नो, यू आर नॉट श्योर कि जो आपने अपना कर्म योग समझा था वो आपका सच में कर्म योग है, तो यू फील नॉट लाइक डूइंग इट. उतना मोटिवेटेड, जो सेल्फ मोटिवेटेड आप पहले से होते थे, वैसा ना हो, what should we do in that situation?
Sure. I would say the first thing is, see, if you did it in the form of karma yoga, like if you did it with that attitude of Ishwararpana, devoting, like Arjuna does that, right? Arjuna actually says that he is surrendering to the Lord, and you please guide me. And if you do it with that attitude, then one of these two messages will come. Either you will know that it is not the karma that you should be indulging in which case you can discard it, and it automatically you will be guided towards what you should be doing, or you will be getting better and better at what you are doing. So if you are not getting better and better at what you are doing, then you need to step back, take a relook at what you are doing, think whether it is the right action, think whether it is what you wanted to do in the first place, think whether it is something that can be truly devoted to God and done for him or for her. And from there, you should get the answer in that specific example. I'm giving you a very general, reply or a response. In the specific situation that you may have in your mind, if you do this, I'm sure you'll get a more specific answer.
Yeah, thank you.
Some of you tell me later on that, you were wanting to ask something or say something. So please speak up. See, I also want to, Kajal, especially for you, others I think have heard it earlier. I also want to re-emphasize that I am a learner along with all of you. Okay, I am no guru. I am sharing what I've learned, and we are all in the process of discovering together. So if you find something or some really nice answers, please do share.
Definitely, I will share. Thank you.
I think somebody was trying to say something.
This is Upasna. You said that it is known fact for Hinduism that life after death, like this one janma and then another janma and then another janma, is what Hinduism believes in, and that Atma is an Ashwar, it cannot die, and we take birth after birth. So you said that this is a known fact under Hinduism. So where is Arjuna now? Like he's to be alive somewhere on this earth?
I would say he's in me and in you. If we are when we are learning Bhagavad Gita, he's definitely there in all of us as a student, because he was the original student. And when we were invoking, that's one of the thoughts I had and comment I made, that let's invoke the Arjuna in us, and let's think about Lord Sri Krishna as we are starting. And yeah, I would like to say that he is in us at this point in time. But coming to your other comment, see, this is a big mystery, okay? I mean, a lot of spirituality is born because human beings are uncomfortable with the unknown. And the biggest unknown is what will happen after my prana leaves me, right? I mean, forget about prana. This unknown of coronavirus makes us, not very settled in our minds. A lot of us go through this, discomfort of dealing with this coronavirus unknown or any kind of unknown, right? So the biggest unknown in our life is what is afterlife. And that is the root cause of a lot of spirituality coming up. And it's not just Hinduism. It is there in Christianity. It is there in, Islam. It is there in other religions. Almost every religion, Buddhism, almost every religion deals with this subject. They may preach something, but they deal with the subject. But leave religion aside. From a spiritual aspect, I also talked about in a previous session about Jivan Mukti and Videha Mukti. So one of the aspects of spirituality is how can we maximize or optimize the way we live in this life? That is Jivan Mukti. If I am able to explore and unveil the divinity within and have that extended happiness and deep happiness, that is Jivan Mukti. That itself, if we achieve, most of us, that itself will be a big accomplishment. Videha Mukti is something in terms of what happens after this life. How many other lives do we need? Ultimately, do we need another life or not? Will we, go to the feet of the Lord? All that is Videha Mukti. We don't know, but I'm sure that both Sri Krishna and Arjuna are with us when we go through Bhagavad Gita, at least.
There's a possibility, that Arjuna has already got moksha and he's not there anymore.
Yes, but the spirit of Arjuna...
we are all looking for moksha, right? Ultimately, and not come to this world again.
True. That is why I used the two classifications of moksha or mukti. One is the ultimate happiness in this life, and the other is no further life. So yeah, the no further life is something that I don't know. I mean, I'll figure it out over a period of time. But at this point in time, my efforts are towards deep happiness, long happiness in this life, which is Jivan Moksha or Jivan Mukti.
Yeah.
Connection to Upasana's question to my question also, actually. Yeah. See, this name Arjun is associated with that body, right? Which was that time existing. It's not the name of the Atman, the spirit which is inside the body of Arjun. That spirit life cycle is, it goes and merges with the Ishvara, Paramatma. So there is only one spirit. Yeah, all of us are instantiations or part of that spirit. So when you say Arjun, where is Arjun? Arjun is that body, right? And we know what happened to Arjun. Yeah, in that story, it finished. It's a body, so it has a start and it has an end. So it has ended. Arjun has, as such, has ended. And the part of Arjun, which is the spirit, it's Nashwar, it goes and merges with the Paramatma. So you can't attach a name or tag to that part, yeah, because that is all in one or one in all, yeah. Is Srini, is my concept understood correct or wrong? Yeah.
I hear your concept, but I'm no expert to say whether it is correct or wrong. And a number of the really celebrated gurus have also not been able to answer this to its ultimate, right? Whether it is right or wrong. So to me, I would say, how does it matter? You know, if we are able to do karma yoga, which means we are dedicating everything to the Lord like Arjuna did, and we are receiving the fruits through as his prasada, that is good enough for now, and that will help us grow step by step to the Jivan Mukti concept that I talked about. Ultimately, whether I merge into God, whether I go into his feet, that when it happens, it will definitely be blissful. I believe in that. But right now, I don't want to worry too much about it, you know, and that is what actually causes a lot of friction where, you know, spiritualism gets converted into religion. And when spiritualism gets converted into religion, people start having different viewpoints and arguing over them rather than pursuing the spiritual path. So right now I'm comfortable being the Arjuna who is pursuing the spiritual path. The self or the pure consciousness is the Purusha in which all the bodies exist, and you know, which is fine, which is acceptable to me. And what happens to that self, that let Bhagavan decide. Maybe Arjuna is in the self, you are in the self, I am in the self, all of us are. And what happens to the self, let Bhagavan decide. Any further thoughts?
So I have just one thought. I don't know if it could be a question in any way. But for Arjuna to actually receive this information, this knowledge, he had to, you know, go through that sorrow and that feeling. And it's not a place that most of us, you know, ever want to be, right? So just thinking backwards, is sorrow a prerequisite to, you know, look for and seek this realization? Is there something like that?
Actually, that's a brilliant question. And we all see that most of the spiritual pursuit starts when there is a lot of, not just little bit sorrow, when there is lot of sorrow, right? So is sorrow required for a spiritual pursuit? I would say yes. Does spiritual pursuit happen when there is sorrow? I would say yes. But is it a prerequisite? I would say no, not necessarily. It can also be because of your overall evolution, that you want to, you're inquisitive by nature, you want to know more. Maybe since we are talking about life after death, maybe in the previous life you have had that sorrow, so now you already are seeking, right? You have come into this life. By the way, in Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna will talk about a lot of these. You know, he will say that, you know, when you go through up to a level of evolution, the next life you can start from where you left off. You don't need to go through all of it once again. He talks about all of that. We'll come to that in due course. But yeah, so I would like to believe that sorrow is not necessarily a prerequisite, but if sorrow is there, it is easier to become spiritual.
Okay. All right.
It's like when you can't control what Viktor Frankl says, right?
Yeah.
When you can't control what is outside, you try to change yourself.
Yeah.
And that is the beginning of being spiritual.
Thank
Thank you. That's a really nice question or thought. Oh, my mother is saying something. Say loudly.
You become mature to accept whatever you face have to face.
Yeah, she says sorrow brings maturity.
Okay. Acceptance. Right?
She says being spiritual brings maturity.
Okay.
I feel sorrow brings in, besides maturity, it kind of brings a lot of more realizations into our lives. it gives us those experiences which we never think of. And like they say, you know, dukh mein sumran sab kare, sukh mein kare na koi. So it's like when the problems come in, that is the time when we start thinking and we mature and we feel how we learn a lot more. That's what I feel like. So
Yeah.
sorrow is important. It is very important. It plays an important role in our life. It's
True.
important to experience them.
Yes.
Another concept is also if there was no sorrow, how would happiness be there?
Yeah.
It's all relative.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all. Hari Om. It's 5:40. Hari Om, thank you very much. See you next Saturday.
Thank you.